The night I thought would finally belong to me began under the desert sky of Phoenix. Shimmering with heat even after the sun dipped behind Camelback Mountain. My name is Natalie Foster. I'm 32, born and raised in Arizona, and after nearly a decade of sweat, sleepless nights, and endless hustle, I had just been promoted to director at my own marketing agency. When my dad, James, called me a week earlier, his voice warm and unusually proud, my chest tightened with a mix of hope and disbelief. "Come early," he'd said. "We'll celebrate you." The words had replayed in my head for days. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally see me not as the wallet that paid for their mistakes, but as their daughter. The resort they chose wasn't some modest place. It was the Phoenician in Scottsdale. The kind of luxury landmark travel magazines rave about. Tucked against Camelback Mountain with sprawling golf courses and chandeliers that glowed like captured stars. Guests arrived in sleek cars, heels clicking on marble, their voices carrying with the hum of violins in the lobby. The kind of setting where you expect a toast to honor someone's milestone. I told myself, tonight is mine. I had slipped into my favorite black dress. The one that always made me feel like I belonged in rooms bigger than my fears. My hands trembled slightly as I pinned on my earrings. Maybe they finally see me, I whispered to the mirror. But the moment I stepped into the ballroom, the fantasy cracked. A waiter approached me with a smile too practiced, holding out a small card attached to a lanyard. "For you, miss." I glanced down. "Limited guest." My chest seized. The words were printed in bold block letters that felt like a brand on my skin. I blinked, certain it was a mistake. But Derek, my older brother, appeared at my side, smirking as if he had been waiting for this. He leaned in, his breath smelling faintly of whiskey. "That means no food," he whispered, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Just drinks." I froze. The laughter hit me before the sting faded. My mother, Carol, stood only a few feet away, clutching her glass of champagne, and burst into a laugh that cut like broken glass. She tilted her head back as if the humiliation of her own daughter were the funniest joke in the room. Guests turned, curious, some chuckling nervously, others whispering behind manicured hands. And my father? James didn't even look at me. He was shaking hands with his business contacts. His smile polished, his eyes elsewhere. The ballroom spun. The chandeliers above blurred as if I were standing underwater. This was supposed to be my night. A celebration of my promotion. My years of sacrifice. My relentless work. Yet here I was, tagged like an afterthought. An extra, at my own party. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My throat burned, but my hands were steady. I slid into a seat at the edge of the room, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app. The numbers glared back at me. For 3 years, my family had treated my company account like an open wallet. Derek's, emergencies. Mom's, medical bills. Dad's, investments. Over $50 gone. My accountant had warned me. Tonight, the mockery was the final straw. My thumb hovered over the screen. The ballroom's laughter swirling like a storm around me. One tap. Deactivate. A confirmation appeared. Account access terminated for all secondary users. I pressed confirm. And then I waited. 10 minutes crawled by. The server brought appetizers to the tables. Silver trays shimmering under the chandeliers. I didn't touch them. I sipped my water. Silent. As if nothing had changed. Then Derek's phone buzzed. He frowned. Swiped. And his smirk collapsed. His face drained as if the screen had slapped him. Mom's phone lit up next. Her laugh died instantly, her lipstick-stained glass trembling in her hand. She leaned toward Dad, urgency twisting her features. James finally pulled his phone from his pocket. His jaw clenched as his eyes flicked from the screen to me. He walked over, his voice low and sharp. "Natalie, what's this?" I lifted my gaze from my water. My expression cool, detached. "Check your notifications." His face tightened, but I didn't flinch. Mom joined him, her voice hissing through clenched teeth. "You're being dramatic. This isn't funny." Derek approached too, panic leaking through his usual arrogance. "You can't just cut us off like that." I stood slowly, smoothing my dress, my heart steady for the first time all evening. Thanks for the drinks, I said, my voice calm. Then I walked toward the exit, heels striking the polished floor with each step. The ballroom's glow faded behind me. The laughter, the whispers, the anger, all shrinking into the distance. Outside, the warm desert air wrapped around me, and the resort's lights glittered like a world I no longer belonged to. But deep inside, a single truth burned steady: they weren't finished with me yet. The night at the resort replayed in my head like a cruel film reel. But the truth was, the humiliation didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for years. Quietly, insidiously, like water eroding stone. That single moment when I pressed deactivate on my phone was just the breaking point of a story that began long before chandeliers and champagne. It started innocently, or at least, that's what I told myself. Derek, my older brother, had lost his job again. He called one evening, his voice shaky but polished with that familiar edge of performance. Nat, I'm in trouble, rent's due, and I don't want to get evicted. I just need a little help this once. He sounded desperate. He always did. I wired him $3 to cover his Tempe apartment. Relief washed over him so quickly it felt rehearsed. At the time, I thought I'd done the right thing. Family helps family. That's what I'd always been taught. A mantra whispered into my bones by Grandma Helen. Then came Mom. Carol had injured her knee and needed surgery. The hospital bill was steep. She called me, her voice syrupy, a mix of pain and persuasion. Sweetheart, you're doing so well. Just a little help with the bills, and I'll be back on my feet. I sent $5 to clear it. Later, I found out the hospital charges were only half that. The rest? A luxury spa trip with her friends. Justified under the banner of self-care. Dad's requests were bolder, less cloaked in excuses. James would call and talk about business ventures or urgent car repairs, never explaining in detail. Sometimes it was $8, sometimes $10. I'd transfer the money, telling myself he was too proud to ask unless it was important. But the pattern grew impossible to ignore. I thought creating a separate company account with linked cards would keep everything organized. Instead, it became their open wallet. Rent, medical costs, ventures, all dripping away month by month. My accountant flagged it. Natalie, you're down over $50 in 3 years. She warned, her tone sharp. You're enabling them. I brushed her off. They'll change. They just need help getting back on their feet. But they didn't change. Derek, instead of paying rent, bought a brand new gaming console. When I confronted him, he laughed. Relax. I needed something to distress. Mom, who had once sworn she hated extravagance, started booking weekend retreats at Scottsdale resorts. The kind advertised with infinity pools and gold leaf facials. She called it healing. Dad, whose business ventures I'd dutifully funded, was actually spending long weekends on golf trips at courses that charged more than some people's monthly rent. I knew, deep down, I knew, but I couldn't stop. Every time I hesitated, I heard Grandma Helen's words echo in my mind. Family helps family. It felt less like love and more like chains. And yet, despite everything I'd given, they never once praised my work. When I landed my first big client, they didn't call. When my agency finally turned a profit after years of clawing through debt, they said nothing. When I was promoted to director, silence. The only acknowledgement came through their requests. Congrats, Nat. Derek had texted when I announced the promotion online. Heard directors get bonuses. How much did you get? Mom mentioned, casually, that she was thinking about a new car. Even Grandma, who had always seemed gentler, called to ask if I could help with her phone bill. Her voice small but expectant. They didn't see me. They saw what I could provide. Still, I clung to hope. When Dad called about the dinner, his voice unusually warm, I let myself believe. We'll honor you, he said. I pictured us toasting, laughing, for once being the family I'd always wanted. But doubt lingered. His tone reminded me of his old loan requests. Smooth and calculated. Derek kept texting, fishing for details about my bonus. Mom casually dropped lines about expenses piling up. Even Grandma hinted at bills. When I checked the company account before the dinner, The truth stared me in the face. Recent withdrawals. $2 tagged as emergency for Derek. $4 for mom's medical costs. With no receipts. Dad had charged something too. Vague as always. They were already spending money I hadn't given them. And I still went to the dinner. Because hope is addictive. Because sometimes the thing you crave most isn't love, it's recognition. That's why the tag hits so hard. Limited guest. It wasn't just about food. It was about my place in their world. Restricted. Conditional. Transactional. I remembered something Monica once told me. Her voice sharp but kind. They don't value you, Natalie. They value what you give them. Stop giving, and you'll see the truth. That night, in the glow of the resort's chandeliers, with laughter bouncing around me like bullets, I finally saw it. And that's why, when I pressed deactivate on my phone, my hand didn't shake. For the first time in years. I wasn't their provider, their ATM, their silent enabler. I was just me. But the cost of that decision? I knew it hadn't arrived yet. Families like mine don't go quietly. The ballroom glittered like something out of a dream. But the longer I sat there, the more it felt like a nightmare choreographed just for me. The chandeliers glowed like captured stars. Crystal glasses clinked in rehearsed rhythm. And laughter rolled across the marble floor. The air smelled faintly of citrus and wine. The signature scent pumped into high-end resorts across Scottsdale. But behind all that glamour, I sat pinned by a badge that screamed, limited guest. The irony nearly made me laugh. I'd built an agency that crafted brand images for clients, crafted illusions, and here I was. Living in one. A celebration that was never meant to honor me but to parade me like an ATM dressed in black silk. From my corner, I saw Dad. James was shaking hands with men in suits I recognized from his golf outings at Arizona Biltmore, the kind of resort Frank Lloyd Wright had influenced. With geometric blocks that whispered old money and desert pride, they were legends of Phoenix's business circles. And Dad was basking in their approval. Not once did his eyes seek me out. Not once did he acknowledge that this was supposed to be my night. Across the room, Mom had gathered a small circle of women near the head table. She was in her element, laughing loudly, retelling some story that undoubtedly cast her as the long-suffering mother with a brilliant but difficult daughter. I caught fragments of her voice carried over the music. She always takes things too seriously. You know how ambitious she is. The women laughed politely, their manicured fingers tightening on champagne flutes. And Derek, always Derek, leaned against the bar like a prince surveying his court. He sipped slowly from a glass of red wine, his smirk sharp enough to slice. Every so often, his eyes flicked to me as if daring me to cause a scene. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. I opened my phone, scrolled to the company account, and pressed deactivate. It was shockingly simple. Years of sacrifice, tens of thousands of dollars drained, undone in a tap. Then I waited. 10 minutes felt like an hour. I sipped my water, the condensation wetting my fingers. The server brought trays of appetizers, tiny tartlets, seared tuna on cucumber rounds, mini lamb skewers. The plates slid across the table in front of me. But my tag barred me from touching them. I stared at the food as though it belonged to another world. One I had been exiled from. And then it began. Derek's phone buzzed first. I saw the wrinkle in his forehead as he read the notification. His smirk faltered, lips parting. He tapped furiously, but whatever he saw only deepened the panic in his eyes. Next came Mom, her laugh cut off mid-note, face tightening as she stared at her glowing screen. She clutched Dad's sleeve, whispering urgently, "Finally, Dad." He pulled his phone from his blazer pocket with deliberate slowness, as though controlling time could soften the blow. His jaw clenched, nostrils flaring. Then his gaze snapped to me. The moment stretched. The music played on, oblivious. Guests chatted, unaware of the storm brewing at the center table. But I felt every eye beginning to shift as Dad strode toward me. "What's this about, Natalie?" His voice was low, measured, but sharp enough to slice marble. He held up his phone like an accusation. I took another sip of water. "Check your notifications," I said evenly. His face darkened. Mom arrived next, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. You're being dramatic, she hissed. This isn't funny. Derek trailed behind, eyes wild. You can't just cut us off like that. He spat. I've got things lined up. You don't understand. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. My heart was steady. For once, I wasn't trembling. Thanks for the drinks, I said, my tone calm, almost polite. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, heels echoing across the ballroom like a drumbeat. Behind me, their voices rose, Dad's sharp, Mom's shrill, Derek's desperate, but I didn't turn back. The resort's glass doors slid open, and I stepped into the warm desert night. The air was thick with the scent of orange blossoms carried on the breeze. The glow of the chandeliers behind me shrank with each step I took toward my car. I slid behind the wheel, the leather seat cool against my skin, and exhaled for the first time all evening. My hands gripped the steering wheel, steady, for the first time in years. I felt like I was the one driving my life. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. 3 days later, the knock came. I opened the door to find all three of them, Dad, Mom, and Derek, standing in the hallway of my small Phoenix apartment. Their faces were tight, drawn with anger and something darker, fear. They barged in before I could even offer a seat. The walls of my living room seemed to shrink under their presence. You've gone too far, Natalie, Dad started, pacing near my couch. Cutting us off like that. At your own celebration? That was humiliating. I met his gaze, unflinching. You invited me to humiliate me. I just returned the favor. Mom's arms flailed as her voice rose. It was a joke. That tag. It was just a joke. You didn't have to ruin everything. A joke? My laugh was short, bitter. It didn't feel like a joke when you laughed at me in front of a room full of strangers. Derek leaned against the wall. But his bravado cracked. His voice was low, shaking. You've screwed me over. I needed that account. I tilted my head. Needed it for what, Derek? The rent I already covered? Or the extra money you pulled without asking? His eyes darted away. His jaw tightened. I stepped closer. What did you really do with it? He hesitated, then mumbled. Investments, stocks, crypto. My stomach dropped, but not from surprise. Anger surged instead. You used my company's money for your gambling? His silence was enough of an answer. Mom cut in, her voice sharp. Stop interrogating him. We're family. I turned to her, fury searing through my chest. Family doesn't treat me like an ATM. Family doesn't laugh while I'm branded a second-class guest at my own party. Her lips curled, her eyes flashing. You're ungrateful. After all we've done for you. All you've done. I interrupted, my voice rising. I paid your bills. Derek's rent. Dad's trips. $50,000 in 3 years. What did I get in return? A limited guest tag and your laughter. The room went still. Derek's face paled. Dad's eyes narrowed. Mom's chest rose and fell. Furious, I walked to the door and opened it wide. No more money. No more favors. No more excuses. Get out. Dad's voice dropped cold. You'll regret this. We're your family. I met his eyes, unblinking. Family respects each other. You never did. They hesitated, anger cracking into unease. Derek muttered under his breath. But I didn't care enough to listen. Mom glared, but her steps faltered. Dad left last. Silent, heavy. The door shut behind them with a click that felt like a lock on a prison door I'd finally escaped. But even as the silence settled, I knew they wouldn't stop. People who live off others rarely give up without a fight. And the next battlefield wouldn't be my apartment. It would be public. The silence after they left didn't last long. Families like mine don't lick their wounds quietly, they weaponize them. I should have expected it. But when the first notification buzzed on my phone 2 mornings later, my stomach still twisted. It was a Facebook post. Derek's name at the top. His profile picture grinning in a baseball cap. The caption dripping with venom. Some people get a little success and forget where they came from. Imagine cutting off your own family after everything they did for you. Selfish, ungrateful, pathetic. And there it was. My name tagged. Ensuring everyone from high school classmates to distant cousins saw it. I scrolled through the comments. Each one a punch. Wow, that's cold. Some people only care about money. Family first. Always. Mom had shared the post, adding a crying emoji and a vague "so disappointed." Dad chimed in with a comment of his own. Never thought my own daughter would betray us. My hands shook as I set the phone down. The betrayal stung sharper than the ballroom humiliation. At least that had been private. Hidden behind chandeliers and wineglasses. This was public execution. By noon, clients were messaging me. "Hey, Natalie, just checking in. Everything okay?" Others weren't so subtle. "We saw some posts online. We hope this won't affect your work." I wanted to scream, to fire back a comment listing every dollar I'd given them, every lie, every manipulation. Instead, I closed the app. Because Monica was right. They wanted me to fight on their terms. And I was smarter than that. The phone rang. It was Monica, her voice sharp with urgency. "Natalie, check your email. A client tipped me off. Derek's been talking to your competitor." My blood ran cold. "What?" She sighed. "He's been bragging online about knowing your client lists. Your strategies. He tried to leak them for cash. You need to lock everything down. Now." I hung up and dove into my laptop. Fingers flying. Every password changed. Every file re-encrypted. I restricted access to my team. Tightened permissions. Secured backups. Years of work, campaigns, client strategies, pitch decks. Everything was at risk. As I worked, memories swirled. Derek's panicked voice in my apartment, confessing he'd used my money for investments, stocks, crypto, gambling. I'd thought that was the bottom. But this was worse. He wasn't just draining me financially. He was trying to destroy my reputation, my business, the very thing I'd built when no one believed in me. That night, after hours of locking down files, I called a lawyer I trusted. She listened quietly as I laid it all out, the Facebook posts, the tweets, the rumors Derek had spread to competitors. When I finished, she didn't sugarcoat it. "This could be defamation," she said. "Arizona law recognizes libel, the written form, as any false statement published to a third party that harms your reputation. And social media counts. You'll need to document everything. Screenshots, timestamps, client emails, even the damage to your business. If Derek shared confidential information, that's also a breach of trust and possibly grounds for civil action." Her words steadied me. For the first time, this wasn't just emotional chaos, it was a legal battlefield where rules applied. So I documented every post, every share, every like. I saved screenshots of Mom's emoji-laden betrayal, Dad's damning comment, Derek's smear campaigns. I archived the emails from concerned clients, the whispers that reached my inbox. Piece by piece, I was building a case. But I also knew I couldn't let my company crumble while I fought. So I drafted a public statement for my agency's social media accounts. Our focus remains on delivering creative, effective work for our clients. We appreciate your continued trust and support. Neutral, professional, no drama. Inside, though, I was raging. They'd taken my money, my trust, and now they were clawing at my career. And all while painting me as the villain. Late that night, I opened Twitter. Derek had posted again. "She thinks she's too good for us now. Watch her crash and burn without family." Mom had retweeted it, her bio still boasting proud mom of two. Dad hadn't posted, but his likes dotted Derek's feed like silent endorsements. The comments under their posts were full of strangers passing judgment. People who didn't know me deciding I was a greedy sellout. I wanted to reply, to scream the truth into their faces. But I didn't. Because Monica was right. Fighting them online would only give them more power. Instead, I turned my rage into resolve. They wanted to ruin me publicly. Fine, I'd fight back privately, methodically, through my work, through my success, and if necessary, through the law. But I also knew one thing with chilling certainty. The next move wouldn't come from me. It would come from them. And when it did, I had to be ready. I chose the diner deliberately. No chandeliers, no marble floors, no clinking crystal glasses, just chipped formica tables, vinyl booths that squeaked when you sat down, and the smell of fried onions lingering in the air. A place stripped of all the illusions my family loved to hide behind. I arrived early, sliding into a corner booth with my back to the wall. The waitress poured me a coffee, steam curling upward, and I wrapped my hands around the mug, grounding myself. My pulse was steady. Tonight wasn't about reconciliation. It was about drawing a line in permanent ink. When the bell above the door jingled, I looked up to see them walk in together, Dad, Mom, Derek, and, to my surprise, Grandma Helen. They hesitated just long enough for me to notice the shift in their expressions. Determination lined Dad's jaw. Mom's eyes darted nervously. Derek looked cornered but still tried to wear his cocky smirk. Grandma's gaze, soft and uncertain, landed on me like a question mark. They slid into the booth across from me, filling the space with tension. Dad spoke first, his voice low, controlled, like he was trying to sound reasonable. We need to talk, Natalie. I leaned back, keeping my face unreadable. I'm here. Talk. Mom clasped her hands on the table, knuckles whitening. We can move past this, she said, her tone rehearsed. We're family. We don't want to lose you. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't care about family when you laughed at me at the resort. When you shared Derek's posts. When you let strangers believe I was selfish and cruel. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't respond. Derek leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You're making us look bad. You cut us off, and now everyone thinks we're the problem. I almost laughed. I called you out for bleeding me dry. Derek, you tried to sabotage my business by feeding my client lists to competitors. Who's making who look bad? His smirk faltered, his jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Grandma Helen, who had been silent until then, reached across the table, her hand trembling as it touched mine. Natalie, she said softly, family is about forgiveness. We've made mistakes, but we're here to fix this. Don't throw away what matters. For a moment, her words pierced the armor I'd built. Memories of childhood birthdays at her house. Summers when she taught me to bake pies. The warmth of her arms when I was little and scared of thunderstorms. All of it flickered through me. But then the flood of recent memories surged back. The limited guest tag at the resort. $50,000 siphoned from my company. Derek's admission that he used my money for crypto and stocks. The smear campaign online. The humiliation. The betrayal. I pulled my hand back gently but firmly. Family doesn't use each other. Grandma, family doesn't treat me like a bank account. Dad's tone sharpened, patience cracking. You're being stubborn. We raised you, gave you everything. You owe us. The laugh that burst from me was sharp, almost bitter. You raised me to believe sacrifice would earn love. But all it earned me was being your personal safety net. I've paid your bills, covered your rent, funded your luxuries. $50,000. And you gave me nothing but mockery in return. Mom's voice rose, shrill. You can't just walk away from us. We're your blood. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. Blood doesn't give you the right to bleed me dry. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a crisp 20, and placed it on the table. The bill lay there between us. Simple and undeniable. This is the last thing I'll ever cover for this family, I said evenly. My coffee, and a tip for the waitress. For a moment, no one moved. The clatter of dishes and chatter of other diners carried on around us, oblivious to the war being waged in our booth. Derek's mouth opened like he was about to argue, but I cut him off with a look so sharp it silenced him. Grandma's eyes filled with tears. Natalie, please. I shook my head. I'm done. Grandma, I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I slid out of the booth, the vinyl seat squeaking under me, and stood. My heels clicked against the tile as I walked toward the door. The bell jingled above me as I pushed it open, the warm Phoenix night wrapping around me. Behind me, the booth remained filled with the weight of everything unsaid, Mom's fury, Dad's cold silence, Derek's desperation, Grandma's sorrow, but none of it was mine to carry anymore. I inhaled deeply, the desert air dry and sharp in my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt the chains slip from my shoulders. They wanted me to believe I couldn't survive without them. Tonight proved I was freer without their grip. And deep down, I knew this was the true ending of the old Natalie, the daughter, the sister, the provider, What came next would be mine alone. The weeks that followed were eerily quiet. The kind of silence that felt more like a held breath than peace. I woke each morning to the muted hum of Phoenix traffic outside my apartment. Sunlight slicing through the blinds in golden bars. The desert air already heavy with heat. For the first time in years, I wasn't juggling their bills, their excuses, their crises. The account stayed untouched. My phone no longer lit up with desperate requests. But freedom wasn't as weightless as I'd imagined. It felt strange, foreign, like stepping into shoes too big after walking barefoot for too long. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for another attack, a new post, a fresh smear, another betrayal. Yet most days, it was only Monica or clients. Voices tethering me back to reality. I threw myself into work. My agency had been struggling under the weight of their demands. My attention fractured between deadlines and damage control. Now, with that weight gone, I felt sharper, clearer. My team noticed it too. "You've been on fire lately," one of my designers said as we wrapped up a campaign brainstorm. "It's like the old Natalie's back." No. Better. Better. That word stuck with me. The campaign I'd been guarding so fiercely. The one Derek had nearly leaked. Launched to glowing reviews. Clients praised our fresh vision, calling it bold, innovative, a breakthrough in Phoenix's competitive marketing scene. New accounts poured in. We signed deals with 2 regional tech companies and a healthcare provider. My calendar filled with meetings, pitches, and opportunities I'd once dreamed about. Work wasn't just survival anymore. It was proof. Proof that I was more than what they'd tried to reduce me to. Still, their shadows lingered. News of their unraveling trickled in through whispers. Mutual contacts. The grapevine that carries family gossip farther than you'd think. Derek had lost his job, not the first time. But this time felt permanent. His debts, hidden under my money for years, finally caught up. Word was he'd been let go for missing too many days. Chasing investments that never paid off. His bravado on social media faded into bitter rants that earned more ridicule than sympathy. I didn't gloat, but I didn't ache either. The pang I felt was cold. A dull reminder that I'd once tried to save him from this exact spiral. He'd chosen it anyway. Mom and Dad faced their own reckoning. Without my steady stream of money, the house payments slipped. Within months, they lost it. The home I'd once imagined inheriting, the one with framed photos of vacations I had unknowingly funded, was gone. They moved into a small rental, a shadow of the life they'd paraded around. Friends who had once enjoyed their generosity drifted away when the money dried up. Again, I didn't cheer, but I didn't grieve either. They had built their lives on my dime. Now, stripped of it, they were learning to stand, or stumble, on their own. Then came Grandma Helen. One evening, as I was sketching ideas for a new campaign, my phone buzzed with a text. "I'm sorry, Natalie. I didn't see how much they took from you. I hope you can forgive me." Her words froze me. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. Memories tugged at me. Her pies. Her gentle advice. Her hand trembling over mine at the diner. She hadn't laughed at me at the resort. She hadn't posted or smeared me online. But she'd believed their stories. Let their lies stand. I set the phone down. Silence was my choice. Maybe one day I'd answer. Maybe not. Monica became my anchor. Every week, we met for coffee at a small shop near Roosevelt Row. Its walls painted with bright murals. The air filled with the hiss of steaming milk. She was the kind of friend who didn't need to be convinced. She'd seen through my family's games long before I had. And now she reminded me of who I was without them. "You're stronger because of this," she said one morning, stirring her latte. "Not because you endured it, but because you walked away." I nodded, the truth of her words sinking in. At night, I stood by my apartment window. The Phoenix skyline glowing against the desert sky. Camelback Mountain loomed in the distance, its silhouette jagged against the fading light. The city was alive, pulsing with possibility, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged to it, not to them. I thought about the numbers often. $50,000. That was what they'd drained. But the real loss was harder to measure. The years I'd spent believing love was transactional. That sacrifice would buy respect. Now, with the skyline before me, I realized something else. The money was gone, but I wasn't. I was still here, stronger, unburdened, my boundaries sharp and clear. Their downfall wasn't my triumph. My triumph was choosing myself. The silence from them lingered like a warning. I knew they weren't finished entirely. Families like mine didn't fade, they schemed. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I'd learned to stand alone. And that was enough. Morning light bled through the blinds of my office, painting long stripes across the floorboards. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, and watched Phoenix stretch awake. Skyscrapers caught the sun like mirrors. Camelback Mountain cut its jagged silhouette against a pale sky. And the desert heat was already beginning to shimmer. This was my city, my life, my work, and for the first time, it felt wholly mine. My desk was a battlefield of sketches, contracts, and notebooks scribbled with campaign slogans. Taped to the corkboard above was something that had become both a wound and a weapon. The limited guest tag from that night at the Phoenician. I'd pinned it there as a reminder. Not of humiliation, but of the line I had finally drawn. Every time my eyes caught those block letters, I remembered the precise moment I stopped being their bank and started being my own person. The agency hummed with momentum. The campaign Derek had tried to sabotage was not only safe, it had become a resounding success, landing us on the radar of clients I once thought were out of reach. Emails buzzed in, invitations to pitch, proposals to sign, contracts to finalize. My team, fueled by the energy of fresh victories, carried themselves with a confidence that matched my own. Yet, even in the triumph, echoes of my family lingered. Their smear campaign hadn't vanished overnight. Old classmates still whispered online. Strangers still commented on posts. And occasionally a client would circle back with a hesitant, "We've heard things." That's when I leaned on the file my lawyer and I had built. A thick folder of screenshots, emails, timestamps, and evidence. In Arizona, defamation, libel when written, wasn't a vague idea. It was real, prosecutable. To prove it, you needed 4 things. The statements were false. They were published to others. They caused harm, and they were made with negligence or malice. Derek's posts, Mom's shares, Dad's comments, each one ticked every box. Social media wasn't gossip anymore. It was publication. "Are you ready to press forward with legal action?" my lawyer asked during one of our calls. I hesitated. Part of me wanted the satisfaction, the formal recognition that what they did wasn't just cruel, it was unlawful. But another part of me wanted nothing more to do with them. Legal battles were time-consuming, draining, a tether to the very people I had worked so hard to cut loose. "Not yet," I told her, "but I want the case ready if I need it." She agreed. "Then we'll keep documenting. If they step out of line again, you'll be prepared." It was a strange comfort, knowing I had that shield. In quieter moments, I thought about Grandma Helen. Her text still sat unanswered on my phone. "I'm sorry, Natalie. I didn't see how much they took from you. I hope you can forgive me." I read it often, my thumb hovering over the reply button, then drifting away. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about letting them back in. It was about freeing myself from their grip. But I wasn't ready. Maybe one day, maybe never.